Tuesday marks the third Yartzheit of Daniella Lee-Casper alaha shalom, Daniella Shena bas Yehoshua Falek. This Shabbos, my husband spoke just briefly about Daniella, and he mentioned that two things that were so important to Daniella were things that we've tried to aim for in building our kehillah. Daniella taught us how to reach out and greet people warmly, and she taught us also to appreciate tefillah and to treat tefillah with the reverence that it deserves. I hope we're doing a good job of emulating her example, and may the schus of the Beit Adam l'Chaveiro and the Beit Adam l'Makom that Daniella exemplified be an aliyah for her neshama. Our shul has, and the other shul, we're now in the Beis Medrash, the other shul is the main shul, but it's being used now. It has a beautiful Aron Kodesh, which I would encourage you all afterwards to go look at, that Mr. and Mrs. Lee dedicated it in Daniella's memory. And every Shabbos, when I walk into shul and I see her name, I daven that she should have nachas from the shul that she really helped to create. Because it was really Daniella's spirit that infused certainly so much of the ruach of our shul. I have reminders of Daniella all the time when we learn halacha at our Shabbos table in her memory, when I wash for Shalosh Shudas, as many of us do here, in her memory, and she inspired that example, and also when our shul is silent during davening, because Daniella was so careful about not speaking in shul. But every so often there are special encounters, and this Shabbos was one of them. So I'm just going to tell you very briefly what happened. We have a very wonderful family in our shul who's involved in Kiruv. And one of the couples they became close to was not yet observant. And when they got married, this family offered, and I think it was a little spontaneous, to make a Shabbat brachas for them. Even though, again, they weren't observant, but they were going to make Shabbat brachas for them. So they needed a minyan. And they called Noam, and of course Daniella came along. And not only did they come over, but in true Daniella fashion, Daniella came over, of course helped make the simcha, and took pictures, and then sent those pictures to the young couple. They were very much struck by her friendliness and her kindness. And when Daniella passed away just a few short weeks later, they actually came to the funeral, and they were amazed and inspired by everything they heard about Daniella. So much so that they really began to increase their observance of Yiddishkeit. So this Shabbos, the husband of this young couple came into shul, as he does from time to time, and he was very moved to find out that Shalosh Shudas this Shabbos in our shul was sponsored by Mr. and Mrs. Lee in honor of Daniella's Yartzheit. He came to shul with his daughter, his baby daughter. Her name is Daniella. And he said that they chose the name Daniella in honor of the person they only met once, but who impacted them for a lifetime. And I want you to know this isn't the only baby that was named after Daniella, because of stories just like that. And the encounters and the stories are many, and we could probably spend the whole night just talking about that. But I just want to say all the avodas Hashem that she inspired should be an aliyah for her neshama. We're very lucky tonight that we have Mrs. Chani Juravel here. When Chani told me that she was going to be in LA, I was thrilled because this was a very exciting opportunity for us to have her speak in shul. And then when she told me the timing and that it worked out perfectly for the Yartzheit, I just couldn't believe it. And there's actually even more hashgacha to that story, but I'm going to leave that part out. So we're very grateful to have her here. Mrs. Juravel is an amazing therapist on the East Coast, a very eloquent speaker, and a very inspiring writer as well. I've enjoyed every opportunity, every time I got to hear her wisdom, and I'm sure you'll do the same. So thank you.
And I owe Shiur a tremendous debt of gratitude, as I owe LA a debt of gratitude for gifting me my latest daughter-in-law, who Shiur made the shit up. So,
and her son is my favorite nephew, married to my niece.
There's a lot to remember here. Okay. You hear me? All right. So nice to be here. It looks different than New York. You're all on time. Years ago, my husband and I knew a wonderful young man. And he worked very hard to become a lawyer. He didn't ever want to become a lawyer. But he had a third grade teacher that used to berate him saying that you'll never be anything like your brother. His brother became a lawyer. So he decided to live his life, to get revenge, go to law school, and go back to his third grade public school classroom and tell this teacher off, and prove that not only was he like his brother, he excelled in law school to a level even greater than his brother had. And after getting his law degree, he went back to the public school in Queens, and he found this lady that I guess they dusted off in the teacher's room to meet him. And he said, "Do you recognize me?" And she said, "I'm so sorry, I don't." And he said, "You don't remember me? Matt, I was in your class, you used to tell me that I wasn't as bright as my brother." And she said, "I'm so sorry, dear. I honestly don't recollect." And he came to us that next Shabbos and said, "Could you believe that I lived to take revenge on this woman who has no recollection? And I wasted all that energy and all that life on this." I remember a woman in our community that lost a beautiful 13-year-old girl to a tragic car accident. Another woman in her synagogue had run over the child. And her life was just a disaster in so many ways thereafter. And when she went to a wonderful rabbi for advice and hoping to find some modicum of comfort, he said, "The only way we could even start is if you forgive the driver." And those two stories highlight to me what the essence of forgiveness is and perhaps what it's not. When we think about forgiveness, ladies, we usually think about it being something to do with the perpetrator, asking forgiveness from the one that he or she wronged. But in truth, that's not really where forgiveness is at. Forgiveness is about us gaining relief selfishly. It has nothing to do with the person who wronged us. They may not know about it. They may not deserve it. They may not even be alive anymore. The point of forgiveness is to really, it's about us deserving, I think, to let go of the weight that we carry. We're all looking to lose weight, right? To let go of that weight that we carry. Because someone doesn't deserve to take up that much space in our minds if they're not paying it. And when it comes to all of that stuff, the baggage that we carry in our lives, because of people that did us wrong, because we're thinking and hurting and plotting and strategizing how to get that message across, all that energy that we expend on not forgiving, it's just not fair to ourselves. So the beauty of forgiveness is that selfishly we gain a level of geula, of redemption, of that healthy space back in our minds again. The Hebrew word for forgiveness is what? Is mechila. Mechila comes from the root machol, a circle. Because when I don't forgive, there's a break in the circle of my energy. You know, when you go, I've seen a lot of signs for chiropractors since I came to LA. Must be a big thing. And when someone gets their spine aligned, right, when there's a break, you don't have that same energy flow. When a person doesn't offer forgiveness to another, they're suffering a break in their own inner circle. It has nothing to do with an external circle of relationship. It's all about me. There was a wonderful woman that I knew years ago. She used to come to a class that I gave. We became very close friends. And I never asked about her family. She didn't know much about mine. We were only, pretty much class-going friends. And I heard she was sitting Shiva. And I drove out to the town that her parents lived, and I got into the house, and the tension was so obvious in that room. She and one brother were sitting together, and then far off in another corner, there was another sister sitting, and it was obvious that there wasn't a lot going on between the two groups. And I came over to her and I said, you look very much at peace. Tell me about your mother. So she said, Chani, there's not a lot to tell. 23 years ago, that sister of mine in the other corner convinced my mother that this brother and I were after her money. My brother and I are both wealthy people. My sister was not. And don't ask, it was complicated. But I'm very much at peace now, because when this all happened, I forgave my mother for cutting me out of her life. I knew that she just couldn't do any better. She never attended any of my children's weddings or bar mitzvahs. She never saw any of my grandchildren. But I'm at peace now because for the first time in 23 years, she knows that I loved her. And I know that I never had to stoop to the level of being petty enough to not forgive. So there's a geula, there's a redemption that a person gains. There's a serenity that a person gains from being a person that extends forgiveness. And again, it has nothing to do with the other person deserving, asking, knowing about the fact that I forgive them. It has nothing to do with whether or not I could trust them. My grandmother, Les Shalom, used to say in a beautiful Yiddish, don't spit at me twice and tell me it rained. Really. I don't have to become a shmata. I don't have to trust you when you're not trustworthy. It's not about any of that. It's just about me selfishly letting go and making more room in my life for the stuff that I really want room for. It says in Koheles, says in Proverbs, Koheles is Ecclesiastics. How many of us know what Ecclesiastics means? One of those words like firmament, right, that kids learn. Anyway, it says in Ecclesiastics in Koheles in the 11th chapter, Haser ka'as melibecha, by removing anger from your heart, ha'aver ra'a mibsarecha, we remove evil from our flesh. That when a person lets go of what angers her, there are physical benefits to that, right? We know that holding on to feelings like anger, to holding on to feelings against other people, there's physical discomfort and anguish that goes along with that. Physical pain, emotional pain, addictions, guilt, high blood pressure, I'm just cheering you up, migraines, heart disease, digestive issues, depression. Those are all the things I pulled up just by putting in the physical symptoms of anger. That the beauty of letting go, again, is selfish on an emotional level, on a psychological level, and even on a physical level. The beauty of just having that physical and emotional space back again. I want to share with you just a beautiful story. I worked with a woman many years ago, older single. She came to me, she must have been about 42, and she had a tremendously impressive IQ. She was working on her EQ, and she told me, Chani, this isn't easy for me. She said, when I was 18 years old, I knew what type of young man I wanted to marry. I wanted to marry a scholar. And my father said, I will not have a daughter of mine supporting anyone. I want you to live like a queen. I want someone to support you. And that made it really difficult because the boys that I really wanted to marry were boys that I wanted very much to support in their studies. She said, as it turned out, about 12 years later, my father fell ill, and I ended up supporting him. And I ended up supporting my mother. And I ended up supporting all of my siblings who did marry whoever they wanted to marry because my father regretted what he did to me. I even made my nieces and nephews bar and bat mitzvahs. And this was really tough because now the boys that I wanted to marry, they're not there. They're not boys anymore. Finally, at about 42, she got engaged to a wonderful, wonderful man. And I said, you know, all those years, all that anger you must have had. She said, I wasn't angry. I said, you weren't angry? You weren't angry at your father? You weren't angry at your mother for preventing you from having and being what you wanted to have and be? And she said, you know, honey, on top of all those years I suffered, did I deserve anger too? I deserve better than that. The beauty of someone that realized that she was too good to be angry. She was too good to hold on to that. The beauty of knowing that she deserved to let it go. to have that mechila because she deserved her machol. On a personal level, I was learning a lot about forgiveness because I started teaching this wonderful sefer called the Tomer Devorah about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, about God's traits of forgiveness and compassion and how we emulate them. And I was wondering how much it would affect me. It's one thing to walk the walk and talk the talk. It's another thing to feel it. And I wasn't really doing anything actively to bring the forgiveness into my life, but I was preparing every week. It was part of my mindset. It was part of my teaching. It was definitely part of my counseling. And I came to Yom Kippur last year after I taught the Sefer, after I taught the book the first time. And there were two people in my life that had hurt me very badly, very deeply. And the pain was old, and it was already pretty familiar. You know when you have that old sweatshirt, you know you have a better jacket, but you keep putting it on, right? So that pain was very familiar to me. It was that old sweatshirt kind of pain. It was Yom Kippur in the middle of davening. And all of a sudden, and I'm not an EBGB type, I have people here to attest to it. All of a sudden, I had this image of this gate opening up on top of me. And these two people that had hurt me so badly, I saw this image of them sort of flying through toward that gate. I said, wait a minute, I'm not ready, pull it back. And then I said, wait a minute, let them go. And I had this unbelievable feeling of light, just of a different sense of being free that went along with it. It wasn't anything that I prepared for. It wasn't anything that I thought about. But it was something that I realized I was ready to do. And ladies, I can't tell you how worthwhile the experience was. And I saw it as God's gift to me on Yom Kippur. Because the truth is, those people had no idea that I was probably holding what I was holding. They were the types of people not to really care. But I am. So that experience of forgiveness was an incredibly self-serving one. And I could vouch for it now that I had it. But it's so hard to let go. It's so hard to let go. About 10 years ago, I got a call from a woman that I had worked with. She said, Chani, I know you don't see children, but can you make an exception? I have this 12-year-old, he's really stuck. I need him to come in and be evaluated. I said, what's his story? She said, well, he was bullied. He was bullied pretty badly a couple of years ago, but that boy has since moved on. He's asking forgiveness. He's welcoming him into his crowd, and my son is still holding on. I know that he's still so affected by that bullying. He's traumatized. I need you to see him. He needs help. They came in. The truth was, she looked a lot worse than this boy. And he sat down, he looked pretty happy, looked pretty smug. And I said, so what are you here for? He said, I don't really know, I'm okay. And I said, well, your mother said something about a bully. He says, oh, that's fine. I said, well, there was a boy that bullied you. He said, yeah, there was this bully 2 years ago, and but he apologized. And I said, well, are you friends with him now? No, I'm not gonna be friends with him. So I said, well, why wouldn't you get back together? It sounds like he's a nice boy. And he said, no, one of our rabbis told us that if you don't forgive someone in this world, they're going to have a really hard time in the next world, and I figured it pays to work. We all get stuck on how could they, why, I'll get hurt if I trust again, I don't want to be vulnerable, right? We all get stuck on the right and wrong. A dear friend of mine had a son who put her through, in her words, the spiritual Olympics in motherhood. Very, very difficult child. And after many years, and after putting him through rehab after rehab, a lot of stuff, he became a magnificent human being. And I remember sitting at the Sheva Brachot. He was a 25-year-old. My friend by then had made Aliyah, and she came back. And we were sitting next to each other, holding hands under the table when he got up to speak. She was squeezing my hand. This was like a difficult night. And he got up and he said, I spent my life making things about right and wrong and getting into a lot of tension with a lot of people because of it. And I decided now instead to make my life about happy. And happy doesn't go with right and wrong. My friend leaned over to me and she said, Chani, who is this young man and what is he doing in my son's body? But the beauty of a young man that was willing to be vulnerable again, even if it meant sometimes not feeling as right. But a lot of us are too violated, we're too burnt, we're too confused. Or maybe we still need to feel the compassion that goes along with being that victim and waiting for that I'm sorry. There are a lot of reasons to stay stuck and not forgive. And there's no one prescription, that's okay, for how to handle hurt or how long it should take to get over it and regain our equilibrium. But I thought tonight that maybe we could create a mindset that would just allow us permission when we're ready to help learn how to let go. And that's where we're going now. I think with everything in life, we all learn, sometimes easier way, sometimes the harder way, that there's a bigger picture. And we tend to stay stuck until we gain that bigger picture in our role as victim, being hurt, being offended, on the unfairness and the wrong of the perpetrator or the person that caused us that pain. But I'd like to present a shift of thought. We could stay in that role of focusing on all the messengers in our life, or we could take the message that we learned from so many in the Torah of focusing instead on the message. And I want to give you a couple of examples. Number one, Yitzchak's wife, Rivka, created this unusual plan to dupe him and to give his blessings to Yaakov instead of Esau. Unusual plan. And she tricked Yitzchak into thinking that Yaakov was his brother, right? We're familiar with the story. And we find that Yitzchak never faults Rivka for doing so. And he never faults Yaakov for going along with it. Lehefech, just the opposite. It says his reaction is realizing that he was tricked. Vayecharad Yitzchak, he shook. He shook harder than he did when he was bound by Abraham as a potential sacrifice. He shook at the recognition that, wow, if I could be tricked now, this must mean that I was